you spent $20 million building a roster, run the dang ball with somebody other than William Howard.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Intercepted! Rod Moore! And Michigan will win the game! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous!
Hail, hail, Michigan, the champions of college football.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, proud to be part of the Varsity Network from Learfield and sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is The Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, Michigan, Ohio State, college football talk without all the tangents from River Radio Ministries and presented by Elevated Integrity Construction. There is a ton of college football to get to this weekend. We'll spin the wheel route
What a weekend.
to break the ice. Shout out, by the way, I've got this helmet placed prominently for a reason. If you're not watching on YouTube, at Rival Pod across social media, how about them Hogs,
Look,
man?
Idiots from the Tennessee letting them score.
Yeah.
I never understand that.
So
I just don't.
My in-laws are right outside Fayetteville. They're huge Arkansas fans. And so that means I've watched enough Arkansas over the years coming in the family that when they scored on Tennessee, I was like, I've seen this movie before. Why? You can tell the Hogs aren't used to being in winning situations because they score, give Tennessee the opportunity to go down and somehow inexplicably hold off Tennessee.
I literally said
amazing
to my wife Laurel after they scored, which she doesn't care, but she was the only person I could talk to about this at the time. And I looked over and I said, too much time on the clock. There was like a minute 17 or something.
Yeah, way too much time.
And I thought way too much time for them to go down. And then in fact, it was not enough time and they lost.
We of course would be remiss not to mention Vanderbilt. Just
what a blessing.
How about Vandy? Knocking off Alabama?
Honestly, I heard that they carried the goalpost 3 miles down Broadway in Nashville to launch that thing into the river or whatever.
Yep. I love it.
A lot of arm strength to carry a goalpost. It's pretty darn heavy.
There's a lot of talk about how the expanded playoff, robs us of a meaningful regular season. Ask Vanderbilt if the regular season is meaningful or not. Ask Arkansas, hey, does this still matter?
And Michigan fans wish the regular season didn't count
Let's
right now.
Let's go ahead and ignore that and go to the wheel route.
Heisman front. It's got to be obvious, right?
I don't know.
Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah. Yeah, Ashton Jeanty's got to be the guy.
How you don't have him as the Heisman front runner right now?
And obviously the other guy that's going to be, there's multiple guys in the mix there. Jalen Milrose in the mix, Cam Ward's in the mix, but I feel like it's Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. Like those are the two guys. And I think too, by the way, I think you can make a legitimate case for Travis Hunter. Obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I don't know how you can look at what Ashton Jeanty has done this season and go, yeah, well, it's got to be Travis just because it's Travis. The Heisman Trophy is not, at least not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a hype award. Travis Hunter has more hype. Ashton Jeanty is doing some incredible stuff here.
And the thing that I like to focus on with this year specifically is it's the schools that never really get the love that have the front runners in my mind right now. Usually you've got your Alabama, your Ohio State, your Michigan, your Georgia. Like those guys are always kind of in the mix with a player or two. But it's nice to see those smaller schools, the Boise State getting a guy in there that's in serious consideration. The Colorado, regardless of if you like Prime or not, Travis Hunter's a baller. He's been a stud all season long on both sides of the ball.
And by the way, I want to clarify, when I say, Ashton Jeanty's doing just some incredible stuff.
What you're saying is
what
valid.
Travis Hunter's doing as a two-way player, we've just not seen that.
I would not be upset if either of them took it home. I think
I'm
both are crazy deserving.
I'm going to be upset if it's Colorado.
I mean, over 1,000 yards and less than 100 carries is just stupid.
And by the way,
16 touchdowns on the ground already.
They pulled him this past week also.
He only had 13 carries.
It's not.
I didn't even need to do much.
It's not the same, but it's kind of like last year where JJ would get knocked for some of his stat lines. It's like, because he's not playing in the second half. You realize that. That's the same sort of thing that Ashton Jeanty's doing. Boise State, man, as the G5 contender.
Love them. Only loss is a close game against Oregon.
If I'm sitting there as, what would that be? The 5 seed, I guess. If they're not ranked higher than that, I guess it depends on where Boise State ends up being ranked. But let's say that they're the 12 seed. Regardless, whoever ends up facing, let's say it's Boise State. I don't want a piece of Boise State. I don't want to have to slow down that run game.
No,
my goodness. We've talked about with expanded playoff. We were talking about this with our boys at Meep Meep Nation from UTSA, and how, with super conferences for the SEC and the Big Ten and expanded playoff. And one of the things we talked about was how, the G5 is never going to really be able to contend.
Yeah.
While that's true, Boise State may give us a great litmus test right off the bat, because not only, yes, a G5 team will at some point pull off an upset in the first round, and Boise State very well may be the team to do that right off the bat. But can you win a second level game? It's going to be a big question, because now you get to play, let's say, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama, whoever.
We even talked about it on that podcast with those guys, where I think I had said, like, it'll be a rarity where you have a G5 team like that come out and pull off an upset. But funny enough, one of the few times we've seen it was Boise State against Oklahoma in years past.
Yeah, that Sugar Bowl game.
With the Statue of Liberty play, which was just a phenomenal team. You'll have stuff like that wherever it'll be exciting for a game.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have what happened where it was Georgia and TCU, and everybody's like shutting it off at halftime because it's 100-3. And that's just, eventually that run is going to stop. Maybe once every 50 years, you'll have a really deep Cinderella-esque run.
The fascinating thing, though, about this year, and then we'll talk about Michigan, Ohio State stuff. The really interesting thing about this year in particular is that we've seen so many upsets already of these teams. So Georgia,
this weekend alone,
Georgia getting beat by Alabama. Okay, it's an upset, but what does that look like? Alabama getting beat by Vanderbilt. Tennessee getting beat by Arkansas. So now all of a sudden you've got these teams. It's like, okay,
USC losing to Minnesota.
The schema, man.
We're going to talk about that.
We've got these. My point in bringing that up, though, is we're looking at this going, oh well, let's say Boise State makes it through the. First of all, we're assuming it's Boise State. That's not a given yet. Army and Navy, both undefeated, will play at the end of the year too. Holy cow! Hold on to your butts. God bless America.
Let's
okay,
go.
But Boise State getting through to a second round and going, well, now you've got to play Alabama, or now you got to play Oregon. Boise State took Oregon to the line already. Alabama just showed me that they're beatable. I mean, outside of maybe Texas, I don't see a lot of weaknesses here. Ohio State, I know, is obviously undefeated, but the only team that I have not seen a weakness on yet, Texas.
Oh, see, I would throw Ohio State in there. I think those are the only two teams that have really handled business this season.
All right, let's talk Michigan, because I've got a lot of problems with you people, and you're about to hear about it. It's a Festivus for the rest of us. The biggest thing that we talked about on the podcast last week for Michigan was the inability to play a complete game. Okay. First half dominance against USC, and then just trailed off, and God bless Khalil Mullings for saving that game. Minnesota dominate for 2.5, 3 quarters, fall off the wagon at the end, still managed to get the win. I said I thought that they probably could get away with it this week, but I expected a more robust game, and I could not have been more wrong.
No,
what a complete and utter lack of a complete game.
I learned so much about Michigan this week that I learned more than I thought that I would. I learned Jack Tuttle's the guy, but I don't think he's the savior Michigan fans were necessarily hoping for. Now, that's not me saying he's like some above average guy, but I think everybody kind of expected that he would go and provide a little bit more stability. And I think but I was looking at the drives because I was coming back from the Ohio State game, so I got to catch the second half of this. And once you guys made the change, once you brought Tuttle in, he comes in and you guys score on each of the next 3 possessions. You get a touchdown, a field goal, touchdown. Beautiful looking drives. He looks in command. Offense seems like it's clicking. You're kind of thinking, okay, this is where Michigan turns the corner and just runs away with this game. And then the next possessions, 3 plays, 5 plays and a fumble, 5 plays interception, 5 plays to end the game. And he just stalls out. And you're looking at the guy that's been kind of the savior this entire season in Khalil Mullings, who didn't have a bad game, but he got outshined by Donovan Edwards. And this was the game where you needed kind of both of them to kind of showcase their skill. And I'm looking at this defense that's been talked about as being an elite level defense, and they come out there and they give up 429 yards of offense. And I'm going, I knew Washington's offense was good. I saw it last week against Rutgers. Michigan's defense, I think both you and I agree, is exponentially better than Rutgers' defense. And so I didn't expect 400 plus yards of offense on overall in that game. Then I start looking back and I go, and this is just from the events that happened this weekend, and I'm looking at USC losing to Minnesota on the road, and I start to look at that and I go, maybe USC is butt. And I go, maybe they are not as good as I thought they were to start the year. And I think of this similarly to the Notre Dame game Ohio State had last year, where going into that game, I thought, okay, this is the big test. It's on the road at Notre Dame. Both teams had good records going into it. And after that game, I thought that was a gritty win from the Buckeyes. That's going to be a monumental win going down the season. And then as the season progressed, we realized, okay, Notre Dame actually is a good team, but not a great team.
Not a great team, yeah.
And I looked at that USC win from earlier as it stands right now, and I look at that in the same light, where I'm going, okay, well, sure, we're going to have to see, and we're going to see it this weekend because they take on Penn State at Penn State. So we're going to see how good USC actually is this weekend, because this is another big game for them. But you watch USC to start the year beat LSU, and you think, okay, they're ready finally to be an elite team. Then they go to Michigan, and they lose a heartbreaker to Michigan. Then they go out, and I forget who they even played after that, Wisconsin, I think, where they were kind of down in the first little bit of that game and actually losing that game to a bad Wisconsin team. Obviously, they ended up getting things corrected and dominating, but then they go and they lose on the road at Minnesota. I'm just not sure yet what to make of USC overall. And so I'm starting to think less of that Michigan win.
Well, I don't think, I mean, number one, you hit on a lot of stuff that I agree with, and I'm going to dive into that. Number two, I don't really care what anybody thinks about the USC win, because that's the least of Michigan's concerns at this point.
A win is a win.
The lack of the complete game I want to go back to first, because this was Michigan starts off here's, and this kind of ties into the Jack Tuttle thing, which is why I paused there. I mean, Michigan spots Washington 14 points before Tuttle ever sees the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so 3 straight punts and down 14-0. You know, Sharon Moore has been criticized, and rightfully so, for the lack of ability to make adjustments, lack of willingness. The willingness to insert Tuttle into that game is a phenomenal adjustment. And I saw people complaining about, well, why didn't he start? Why didn't he start? Because the man has not started a college football game in years. He was back up to Michael Penix. He was back up to JJ McCarthy. He's been injured. He's been hurt. The last place you're going to insert a guy who's coming in cold is your first road game of the year. Mm-hmm. He's not going to start that. You're going to insert Alex Orji. You're going to continue to try to run the same thing you've ran, because you should be able to have success there. When you get yourself down, that is the absolute right moment to insert Tuttle. Yeah, 3 punts, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Here's the minus the end of the game drive, which at that point,
yeah, the game
doesn't matter. Michigan's last 4 drives: punt, fumble, pick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's Washington's last 4 drives: field goal, pick, touchdown, field goal. 13-0 on the final 4 drives for Washington. There's your ball game. You started slow, you ended slow. Until Michigan can play a complete football game, I don't see them being favored in any games moving forward against teams not named Northwestern, maybe not named Michigan State.
Your schedule, you're obviously on a bye week this week, but then you come right back and go on the road at Illinois, who's currently ranked. I forget what they're ranked now, but
everything for Michigan just got exponentially more difficult. And until it doesn't really matter who you play. If you don't play a complete game, ask Alabama, ask Tennessee, ask Mizzou,
ask USC.
It doesn't matter who you're playing if you don't show up to play the game. Now, I will remind folks as well, Washington was favored in this game, okay? This was a home game. This was a road game against a home favorite, okay? That does not excuse it, but I'm saying if you're going to circle things and go, well, this is an unranked upset like Alabama. No, it's not. You're an idiot. Yeah. Not you. Well, sometimes you are. Not fair. Right now you are.
That's fair. But my team's undefeated.
That's all I have to say about the complete game thing. Is just it's ridiculous. Jack Tuttle clearly the guy going forward. I get the frustration with, well, you turned the ball over twice. It's just like Davis Warren. You're an idiot. No, it's not.
Well, here's where
it's not. This is a Michigan fan. You've got to be. This is why you wouldn't have Tuttle start the game, because the guy has not played college football in a year.
But aren't you kind of throwing him in to an even worse situation when you're down 14-0.
But you can't anticipate that though.
I know you can't, but that's what I'm saying. Why, if he's healthy enough to go, and you know that he's better than Alex Orji or Davis Warren,
because you can't insert a guy who hasn't started in so long and make that his first
regardless,
start.
Whatever his first snap is going to be is still going to be the first snap in years.
Yeah, but
to me, there's more pressure from a guy going in with the pressure of being down 2 scores than going into a game that's 0-0 and he gets to go.
Right, because but you can't anticipate that. So what you would rather do is, if you know he's good to go, you'd rather be able to insert him up a couple scores somewhere down the road. You'd rather insert him at Michigan State. The way that Michigan
offense has been going, I don't think you're going to get the chance ever.
The Michigan offense was Michigan was 4-1. Why would you? And so I get, in hindsight, I get the frustration that Michigan fans are having, and I get your point.
I'm talking about like going up numerous scores. I just don't see happening. But there
are better places that you can insert him. That was a desperation insert, and it was the right call.
I don't disagree with you. I think there's some other parts of that I would disagree with. But overall, as a whole, I agree with you. I do think, because I don't know his practice status or anything like that, I can understand you not starting him if he didn't go full length practice all week, and something like that.
And he had been. He was off the report. He was questionable for USC. He was good to go for Minnesota. And Minnesota would maybe be a good example even.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, before everything turns, obviously, but when you're up 21-0, 24-3, whatever, that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. Like, that would be a good place to insert him.
And I guess for me, I'm looking at it from Alex Orji has done enough to get the job done. And I think he had still provided a little bit of a spark compared to Davis Warren, what he had been giving you. So I can understand starting that game with Alex Orji, because you don't want to pull him for no reason while he's still been able to go out and give you wins.
Yeah. Despite the way it's looked, the run game has been successful, and you should be able to run on Washington.
Not this week because you guys are on a bye, but going into Illinois will tell you a lot about this coaching staff on what decision they make there. Because I think you and I are in agreement. It's got to be Jack Tuttle.
Well, this should be, and again,
it should be a no-brainer.
I'll remind folks too, we record this Monday mornings before Schroen's press conference. He didn't commit to Tuttle post game. He made a number of references that sound like Jack's the guy going forward. If he's not, everyone should rightly lose their mind. So that's the offensive side of the ball. You mentioned the defensive side of the ball. My concern is not even so much that Washington racked up 400 yards of offense.
429.
This is going to sound ridiculous. That's what Washington does. That's what Washington did against Washington State.
Something.
That's what they did against Rutgers. So I'm not concerned about that. Here's what I'm concerned about, and it's the coaching and schematics. Okay, it's Wink Martindale every single week till it changes. Lining a guy up 10 yards off the receiver. The soft coverage that Michigan demonstrated in that game is ridiculous. And I want to make a big distinction here. The knock on Michigan was going to be this year. We knew it was going to be a down year, because understandably, you changed head coaches, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator.
Basically everybody.
You lost 13 starters, 18 starters, whatever it was. You lost a ton of talent. You knew it was going to be different. That I can accept. I can accept going 8-4, 9-3, going, hey, we lost a ton of talent. This was bound to happen. What I cannot accept is misusing the talent you have. And that's what Michigan's doing on defense. You're telling me that with Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, Will Johnson, et cetera, you're going to line guys up 10 yards off a receiver in soft coverage. And basically your game plan, if you're Wink, is either we get home or we don't. That is Don Brown type stuff, my guy. Like that is absolutely ridiculous, because you know what you do to adjust to that.
They would play 10 yards off of a Jeremiah Smith or an Emeka Egbuka.
And that's exactly my point, is what got Don Brown shown the door is he was Dr. Blitz, and he would just do it at ridiculous rates. And if it worked, it worked. And if it didn't, all you had to do is call the famous crossing route slant routes, right? Run a slant. And guess what Washington did over and over and over again. It's misuse of talent. And here's the bigger concern here for Michigan is that there's no fixing that in the bye week.
Yeah.
Wink is not going to suddenly adjust his schemes in the bye week.
Mindset on defense.
This is an old dude that nobody in the NFL wanted. Michigan threw him a lifeline because they were in a desperate situation. Fine. But this is why. If you're wondering why Wink was available, this is the type of stuff that's why.
Well, and
wasting guys like Will Johnson, lining him up where he's lining him up, ridiculous. Washington had one play in particular that got a lot of attention where they had a 3 receiver bunch to the right. Michigan had 2 guys in coverage. That's not a talent issue. That's a coaching issue. And that is going to get them burned because, and you mentioned this too, and I'll kind of get to your last point here. This just got exponentially more difficult for Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan had basically 2 mulligans coming into this season. We looked at it and said, hey, probably Texas, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, right?
And you thought you got to split them to have a shot.
Those were, Texas, USC, Oregon, Ohio State were the 4. You knew you had to go to Washington. You've got some other stuff in there. Okay, you can afford 2 losses in that schedule and probably get away with it. You've got 2 losses now. You wanted to, this is a weird way to put it, but track with me here. You want to save that one for Oregon or Ohio State. Okay. You want to be able to be a 10-2 team.
Yeah, having 2 losses and looking at that being on your schedule still, panic mode.
You have no mulligans, and here's what they've got. So Illinois is ranked 23rd. They play Purdue this week, so I'm going to go ahead and bump them up to a fringe top 20. Okay. So Illinois, notwithstanding, kind of hanging just outside the top 20 there. Michigan has 4 top 20 games left on the schedule. 3 of them are on the road. 2 of them are against 3 of the.
What is it? It's Illinois, Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State.
They are at Illinois. They are at Indiana. They are at Ohio State, and they also play Oregon.
Oregon's at least at home. But
4 top 20 fringe top 20 games left. 3 on the road. 2 of those teams are in the top 3.
And even though Ohio State and Oregon beat up on each other this weekend,
it won't matter.
Regardless of a loss, will still probably be a top 10 team both times you play them.
And it doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't matter where you're ranked until Michigan shows complete game. The offense, weirdly enough, was not my biggest concern in this game.
No, I mean,
because
to me, that's got to be the defense. I still think
saw the way that, yes, turnovers aside, you saw the way that the offense looked different under Tuttle. That is one of the things that a bye week does help with.
You at least could throw the ball. He still didn't throw it crazy. I mean,
but again,
fine.
That's why I'm going to say that's why you don't want to just insert him in there, is because he's coming in cold, and you do risk stuff like that. Those turnovers are also vastly different from Davis Warren just chucking a ball up to God knows who, right? Yeah, so for Michigan moving into the bye, stuff that can be fixed, health is going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
Miles Hinton didn't play in that game. Derek Moore didn't play in that game. You've got guys like Will Johnson who, even though they were full go, have been really banged up. You want to make sure that Jack Tuttle gets a ton of reps. Those are things bye weeks can help with. What a bye week doesn't help with is coaching schemes that refuse to adjust. And the reality that you're looking at a Michigan team and you have to be honest enough to go, this is just not a great football team. I think they're a good football team. They're an average football team, but they're not a great football team. And if you had come out of Washington with a win, that would have been a big boy win on the road. 5-1 heading into the bye with still kind of that lost mulligan in your back pocket. This feels completely different, but you didn't. And until you play a complete game and until I see Wink actually adjust some of these schemes, it doesn't make sense to me. And the nonsensical nature of this tells me that Michigan is likely to go about 7-5 to finish out the year.
Well, and the thing is, you mentioned those key games. And if I'm any of those opponents right now and I'm looking at Michigan and how they're playing, I'm amped because you were already, just based off namesake and the past couple of years, you're already getting everybody's best shot. You're the defending national champions.
And that's the beauty of Michigan and Ohio State is both of our programs get the best shot.
It doesn't matter. Illinois, the crowd is going to be into it. They're going to be ready to give you their best shot.
And that right there, by the way,
it's not going to be easy.
That right there, I mean, do you want to know how painful the rest of the games are going to be? That's the one, because this is an Illinois team that's going to come into that game, 5-1?
Yeah.
5-1, probably top 20, if not, fringe top 20, if not in the top 20.
Honestly, their only losses to a currently undefeated Penn State team
the Illinois
that they had a shot at.
In the new playoff, Illinois got everything to play for. Indiana's got everything to play for. So do you want to come in and play it as a Michigan team, a team with no momentum right now, and play that team? No. So we'll find out a lot about Michigan. An extremely frustrating way to go into the bye week, as you can tell.
At least you get a week off of whatever that is.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Then that lingers with you. And maybe that's what they need. What they need is to fire Wink during the bye week.
They're in their filth and have to watch replays of that Washington game for 2 weeks straight.
And I'll leave it alone there. But that's just what kills me is the talent on the Michigan defense. I can deal with lost talent. The talent on the Michigan
offense was going to be hard to watch. Watching a defense that still returned really good NFL caliber talent,
and to see them misused that way, because it's not a you've got 3 guys bunched up. It's not a talent thing when you've got 2 guys lined up.
I think
it's not a talent thing when the coach says, hey, back off 10 yards.
Here's the other thing that I wanted to hit on with this game.
That puts guys in impossible situations. And if I'm Michigan, I know you don't fire a DC at this point in the season. I would. This is maybe, I don't even know if it's a hot take, and I don't even know if logically it makes sense. But in this moment, I go, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, someone's going to fill the spot. I understand. I'm speaking from emotion here.
Who could be doing it worse?
Wink Martindale will not be the defensive coordinator next year.
I wanted to hit on one last stat that I thought was kind of crazy because we've talked about it all season long, mostly after the USC game. Michigan's offensive game plan is to run the heck out of the ball because that's all you guys have really had. And this was a game where you guys did it and did it well. You guys still had about $170 on the ground and still came out losing, which if I'm a Michigan fan,
that's rare,
makes me worried as all get out because I'm looking at this going, okay, well, normally when we get 170 plus yards, I'm feeling pretty good. The offense seems to be doing well.
It is just rare in college football to win the rushing game and
still lose.
I mean, I don't remember the stat, but the stat has been floated around about Michigan and Ohio State. Whoever's won the rushing game, but in the game has won 22 out of the last 23, something like that. That's the trend
with just college football now in general. If you can't run the ball and run the ball well, you don't stand a chance. And I was surprised when I was watching this game because I'm like, man, Donovan Edwards finally shows up for a game, has almost 100 yards, has a sick touchdown run. I'm looking at Khalil Mullings
split Khalil evenly, 14 and 14.
And I'm sitting there going, that's exactly what you want if you're a Michigan offense and you're a fan of them, is you want to see that combo perform just how they did. You'd like to see Mullings have a little bit better of a game, but that's kind of the split you kind of want to see if Donovan's performing that way. And for them to come out and still only put up 17. You still had Tuttle still threw, I think, 90-something yards. He was 10 of 18.
And one of the things that you saw with Tuttle right away was he forced Washington to back off a little bit. And that's one of the things that is going to be helpful with that. This is one of the reasons why Tuttle's going to be the guy going forward is he can throw the ball. Mm-hmm. He's a 9th-year senior or whatever. Him and Giles Jackson, apparently,
him and Stetson Bennett went to kindergarten together.
Bennett and then Giles Jackson,
all meet at the IHOP on Sunday mornings to go over the local Friday sports.
But Jack forces you to respect the pass game a little bit more, which obviously, if you can pass this forward pass thing is a game changer. And so, I think the offense will be much better suited under Tuttle, and I think that is where a bye week helps out. But just the lack of explosiveness, the lack of talent, and especially the defense. And I'm not harping on the players and the talent. I think they're being put in impossible situations. And that is the thing that's going to get under my skin the most, probably. By the end of the year, 2 things will be true. Number 1, if you lose to Ohio State, that's the number 1 thing under your skin. Number 2 is going to be looking at a defense and going, how in the world did we mismanage that? Mm-hmm. Because it's not a talent thing, it's a coaching thing. Maybe you feel a little bit like Wink Martindale in Michigan.
There it is.
You know what you're doing isn't working, and you'd like to transfer in some help. Instead of lining up 10 yards off the receiver, our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the key to a successful project. Aaron Carroll and his team, they've been doing this a long time. Communicate openly and honestly. They will leave you wowed at the finished project, unlike Wink Martindale. Home, church, or business build, go with the folks with integrity in their name, elevatedintegrity.com. We're also proud to be part of the Varsity Network this season, powered by Learfield, and the Varsity Network is a must-have for every college football fan. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. You can enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like this one. Search for your school to find tailored content and be sure to search for the Rivalry Podcast in the Varsity Network app. We mentioned this earlier, but across social media as well, at Rival Pod, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and then rivalpod.com. We have blog articles that go up each week, links to YouTube and social media, gallery of photos from the Iowa game as well up there.
Yep, just put up.
And an opportunity for you to support the podcast. We've got some amazing maize and blue, scarlet and gray t-shirts. You can find whatever one works best for you. And if that's not really your vibe, you just want to give a little gift and say, hey, I want to support you guys. Thanks for what you do. Click support at rivalpod.com. Support at rivalpod.com. Okay. Let's talk about something besides Michigan, for gosh sakes.
I'm not done.
Unfortunately, we got to talk about Rutgers to the Rose Bowl.
What a disappointing thing that happened on Saturday.
This is where we measure how likely it is the Rutgers goes to the Rose Bowl, and it took a hit.
I forget what I ended up sending to producer Eric, but I want to say it was about a 4 out of 5. It's not been killed off. They obviously lost to Nebraska. That was your stupid genius pick last week. And I was at the Ohio State game right when this game started, so I didn't get to watch it. You were kind of texting me some updates. Lost 14-7. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot. They had a missed wide open touchdown grab. They had a touchdown run that should have counted. I'm still upset about it. I saw the replay of it. Kyle Monangai scored a touchdown. This was a game where Dylan Raiola had his worst passing game. They spent 9 of their first 11 possessions in Nebraska territory. I mean, it was just, if you would have read the stat line off to somebody and you wouldn't have shown them the final score, you think Rutgers wins this game by double digits. And they just, in typical Rutgers fashion, found a way to lose. So it did take a small hit, but I still got faith. This is still a decent Rutgers team.
Do you think they lost because I put on the Mike Teal jersey?
I think you jinxed them. I think
that's my bad.
This needs to stay on the good guys' side, and we need to leave it at that.
I agree. There's no reason for me to put on a Rutgers jersey for the rest of the year. We can agree on that.
After that, you've officially jinxed it. So yeah, the Shiano meter down to a 4 out of 5. Still going strong.
So talk to me about Ohio State and Iowa, because this, we've talked in the past about tale of two halves for Michigan. Yeah, what was that?
So here's the thing that's frustrating from an outside point of view. And you can be frustrated, and because it's my job on this podcast to be a little nitpicky, I'm going to be a little nitpicky with stuff. So you go into this game, Iowa is talked about as being a first test, however you want to put it.
Tests are relative, but it is the biggest. Yeah,
everybody knew the defense would be the defense.
It is Iowa is the best clarifier you could have put there.
The defense was going to be the defense. The offense was going to be there, and that was going to be that was going to be the game. And Ohio State at halftime was only up 7-0, and everybody around the country is going, "You guys can barely do anything against Iowa. It's 7-0." That game was in Ohio State's hands the entire time. There was not a moment that stadium felt like Iowa had any sort of momentum. They were down 7-0, but at the beginning of the game, and this is where I'm going to be a little nitpicky. At the beginning of the game, it's 4th down and a decently long 2. So 4th and 2. And the play call is a quarterback run with Will Howard. Chip, I'm going to tell you one thing. You spent $20 million building a roster that features 2 All-American running backs named Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, who, mind you, have stiff-armed grown men 6 feet deep into the ground this year. Run the dang ball with somebody other than William Howard, who is the only shot you guys have at going far. Because let's say he goes down. If I am forced to watch a Devin Brown season because you're risking the health of Will Howard on a 2-yard 4th down conversion, you and me will meet in the parking lot and I will fisticuffs with you.
Jesus, I don't ask for much.
Somebody Manchester me on that, because I'm watching that and it's a no cheering, no whatever press box, which I hate. But I'm up there, and they go and do this play call, and it took everything in me to not open the window of the press box, scream down where Chip Kelly is sitting, and go, "Chip, come here a quick second. I have some words."
Well,
that's my first thing.
Okay, first of all, this is not important, but he sits up top, my guy. He sits up top. Just walk down, talk to him.
They don't let me in that room.
They don't let you open the window and yell down to the coaches either.
It's weird how that works. But that's my first nitpick.
I'm gonna counter something, because I don't want this to go amiss, because otherwise it's just me whining about Michigan the whole time. There were absolutely things that Iowa did in that first half that gave them momentum. You turned the ball over twice.
They did nothing with it.
You turned the ball over twice.
They did nothing with it.
The idea that Ohio State was never in trouble in this game is ridiculous.
No, here's the thing.
You played a 7-0 game and turned the ball over twice.
Let's say Iowa goes down and scores and it's 7-7. In your mindset, watching that from an opposing fan, is there any sort of idea in your mind that Iowa's going to win that game?
If nothing changes, yeah.
No, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
If Will Howard continues to throw interceptions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
that's the other nitpicky thing. Will Howard's interception throw was a bad throw. Here's the thing with the fumble. Ohio State, so that was the first drive. They go down, they score a 14-play, 80-something yard drive. Just absolute meticulous work.
Frankly, it looked like Iowa. It looked like Iowa switched jerseys.
It was great. And they go down, they score. Then they go down, they have the fourth down where they were driving deep in Iowa territory. I like the aggressiveness. I hate the play call. This is the same mindset that I had that I wanted Ryan Day to have going this year, but I just need you to be better about it. Could you not suck while doing it? Because I'm looking at this and I'm going,
but all I would say better. Is change everything about the way you did it.
I'm fine with him going for it on fourth down rather than kicking a field goal. But running it with Will Howard is I just will never be on board with for something like that, especially when you have a two-headed running back monster like you have. It just doesn't make sense to me. Then they go back down again, and that's where they had the fumble with Jeremiah Smith, which was at like the 15-yard line on a great catch. He's a freshman. He's going to have those mistakes every once in a while. By the way, he also had a sick, nasty one-handed catch. He is the best receiver in the nation. It's not even close.
Pushed off.
But he goes down there, and he has a mistake. Sure. But Ohio State was driving again. It's not like the offense was going out there and stuttering. The offense was moving the ball. This was a game that sure at half was 7-0, but easily could have been 20-0.
Yeah, but see,
regardless.
Here's the thing, though. Hold on, though. I'm reclaiming my time. This is the same stuff, though, that we talked about last week with Michigan State, where it was like, well, Michigan State's just not very good because, they can drive, but they don't do anything with it. Why doesn't that apply here?
Because Ohio State did it in the second half. Michigan's not done that, or Michigan State's not done that. Michigan, too, hasn't done that for an entire game. And so Ohio State goes down there, and obviously you're looking at Michigan State last week, and they're playing Ohio State, who's a tough team. And so you can't have those kind of mistakes. So, sure, if Ohio State does that against Oregon, it's not going to be a fun time. But going into Iowa specifically, we're talking about that game specifically, then I'm not worried about it at all. I'm looking at that going, the offense has been able to move it. They're not going to turn the ball over every single time they're on the field. They'll get it together. Iowa's not moved the ball at all. Caleb Johnson, outside of going against second and third stringers at the end of the game, did literally nothing.
I think that was the most impressive piece from Ohio State because I wasn't impressed with the offense. But I thought the defense actually, the ability to bottle up Caleb Johnson, that's Iowa's entire offense, right?
The defense again.
Cade McNamara is a terrible quarterback, by the way. But and again, my big thing from the Michigan side was going, did Iowa win, but I said specifically, did Iowa's game plan work? And it absolutely didn't. And that's concerning. That's concerning to a Michigan team that relies on probably run the ball better, but relies on run the ball.
You're looking at all these reporters. So like ESPN was going out there and they put out an article thing and it said like top teams struggle against competition or something like that. And it talked about Iowa and Ohio State and saying Ohio State struggled against Iowa. The score was 35-7, my guys.
Yeah, they wrote that at halftime.
If they take a little bit better control of the ball in the first half, you're talking about a 49-7 victory for the Buckeyes, maybe even more. And honestly, the touchdown by Caleb Johnson at the end was a garbage time, if you want to call it touchdown. It counts, sure, but it's nothing to put your hat on. And so I walk away from that game with some stuff that I'd like to see cleaned up. I'd like to see, obviously, the turnovers cut down. I saw glimpses of what I saw last week against Michigan State where I thought Will Howard, there was a throw right at the beginning of the game that was a needle throw, but it was risky. But he completed it, but it was risky. And then he had the boneheaded interception, which we saw happen twice last week against Michigan State. You can't have those throws against a team like Oregon. Jeremiah Smith, as phenomenal as he's been, a fumble like that when you're already threatening to score. I mean, a fumble like that regardless, but that costs Ohio State a scoring opportunity.
Yeah.
You can't have those kind of things happen.
You can do it against Iowa.
You can do it against Iowa. Any of the competition they've played so far, you can risk that. And I know the one interception Will Howard had against Marshall was one of those screw it, Jeremiah Smith's down there somewhere throws.
Yeah.
But he was
down there, just not right there.
But it's one of those things. I try not to get too hateful with it because of the competition. I think Iowa's a good team. I thought it was a good enough team to kind of get you ready, but I'm looking at this ahead and I'm going, all right, well, now you've got the big boys.
Yeah.
And you're going to Oregon, which we can lead into unless there's something else you want to talk about.
And again, it's called the rivalry for a reason. The whole point is, hey, we're probably not going to agree on this.
Yeah.
The second half for Ohio State was exactly what you would have liked to have seen the whole game. The first half, though, I think just raises concerns for exactly the reasons that you're referencing. I'm going to just connect the dots a little differently and go, there's been some consistent plays from Will Howard where you go, what are you thinking?
Yeah. And I wrote that in my blog this past week where I said, Will Howard is only going to take you as far as he can.
Will Howard what?
Will Howard what? Laurel was so proud that I put that in there, but it's true. You can have all the talent in the world, but
we're against Michigan State. Like you just can't do that against Iowa. It's not going to cost them the game, but that's where I look at the first half from Ohio State and I go, the way that they came out, that's great that they're moving the ball. They scored 7 points in the first half. Iowa is an okay team. They're not a great team. Mm-hmm. You turn the ball over twice. Yeah, twice. And then again on downs, right? Mm-hmm. That you can't start sluggish like that against Oregon.
In their defense.
That raises concerns for me because Iowa's offense, I'll say this, last thing on Iowa. Iowa's offense is incredibly sluggish, and yet they were still in a 7-0 game with Ohio State in Columbus. That has to raise at least some concern to go, we've got to get that fixed.
I think some of it is a coaching mentality where I think if this past Saturday was Oregon, I don't think Ryan Day, and this is where I kind of hope he proves me wrong this season, right? Is I look at that 4th and 2. I think Ryan Day kicks that against Oregon.
See, I don't think, and I'm not even opposed to.
If I'm going off years past, and I would hope that he would go for it still.
I'm not even opposed to that. I'm just saying the inability, this is going to come back to the Notre Dame stuff, right? This is a tough team. It's a tough team. You can't get 2 yards.
And that's where I look at the play call. I think Ohio State gets that if they hand the ball to Travion or Quinshawn.
But that's the thing, man. It's like this has been for Ryan.
And
this has been
Ryan,
over and over and that's fine. But it's been this way for Ohio State for years now. Where if we had done this or if we'd done that or if it hadn't snowed or we didn't have the flip, it's this sort of thing. What I was going to say on Iowa, and I'll stop bashing you for like 30 seconds maybe. Here's the thing that killed me about Iowa. Iowa looked like they were surrendering from first half.
The best part was
there were a couple of different opportunities. Number one was trying to kick a field goal instead of going for it. You're not going to beat Ohio State kicking field goals.
So they go out there and then there was the one point in the game where it's 4th down and they go out to get it. They get it, but they called a timeout.
Yeah.
They called a timeout after already getting it.
Yeah.
To which then they go out and decide to kick a field goal and miss it. And somebody tweeted out and said, Kirk Ferentz with the greatest stop to Iowa's 4th down conversion ever.
So those are two different ones. So the first one that I'm talking about was like 4th and 2, 4th and 3, and they tried to kick a field goal.
Yeah.
But you got to go for it.
Yeah.
The one that you're talking about was a 4th and 1 at the 50.
Yeah.
They lined up and they should have gone for it straight up. They lined up to punt and then faked the punt and got it. Yeah, called a timeout to stop themselves and then lined up to go punt. What in the world is happening in Iowa?
Punted it.
And actually that was, and I referenced it and this will surprise nobody. I said, that is some Ryan Day, Georgia 2022 cowardice right there. Because it's almost the exact same. Now, Georgia called that timeout, but the scenario is almost exactly the same. 4th and 1, we can absolutely go for this here. We're going to line up in a punt. We're going to fake the punt. Get it. Timeout was called. Then we're going to kick it. Iowa deserved to lose that game for no other reason than that right there.
And they were going to regardless.
Also because they gave up like 35 points.
Yeah, they were going to regardless. Right. Ohio State was clearly
enough
the better team.
Enough about Iowa. Let's talk Oregon.
Yeah,
because
this is the one.
This is a phenomenal slate of games, by the way, this weekend. If you don't know, I've been calling it football Christmas in my home.
2 weeks, honestly.
This weekend alone, Red River rivalry, Texas and OU, Penn State USC, Ohio State Oregon, Ole Miss LSU, and Tennessee at Florida should have been on there too, but apparently Florida doesn't exist anymore as a football program. But this is of the incredible slate of games, this is the top one.
Yeah.
Hands down. This is
number
the top
2 versus
one.
number 3. Heavyweights under the lights in Eugene. I was trying to sit down last night and just do a little bit of prep for today's podcast. And I'm looking at these teams trying to say, okay, who's got an edge where? What am I thinking going into this? These teams are so similar.
Yeah.
So similar.
Spider-Man meme.
I'm looking at it, and it's going to sound weird to say, but I think position-wise, Ohio State has the advantage overall. But stat-wise, these teams are so identical. You're looking at this, and I'm going, okay, quarterback position. I'm giving to Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
Running back room, I'm giving to Ohio State. Wide receiver room,
Ohio State.
Ohio State probably, but it's close.
Yeah.
Tight end. I'll go Oregon.
Yeah.
I'll go Oregon for that.
For the record, I've not been impressed with Ohio State's tight ends.
O-line, similar.
Yep.
D-line, similar. I would say Ohio State's probably got the edge there overall on defense. So you're looking at this and you're going, okay.
But again, like you said, not
close,
by much.
But it's close. There really isn't a gap. I'm looking at their running back, Jordan James. He's the main guy. He's got about 550 yards on the ground, 6.3 yards a carry. Ohio State showed what they could do against Caleb Johnson, who was the nation's second leading rusher. They were able to kind of shut him down. But the thing with this offense for Oregon, they've got 5 dudes that have over 100 yards on the season. They've got 3 of them that have over 250 yards. Ohio State's got Ibuka. They've got Jeremiah Smith, obviously.
I think that's though.
They've got playmakers. I mean, they've got the talent. They've got, sure, they don't have a lead back like Jordan James, but you've got Quinshawn.
Running back is not an issue for Ohio State.
It's so similar that I've gone back and forth on what I think this will be. Ultimately, and it's going to sound like a cop-out thing, I really believe that this game comes down to whoever makes the first mistake. It is so tightly contested that field goals aren't going to win it. If you're going down and at the end of every single one of your drives, you're coming up with a field goal, I just don't know if that's going to be enough. I think both of these offenses are high-powered enough.
I think if that's all you're coming away with, but like this is going to be a like you take the point sort of game.
But do you think, because I'm looking at this and this is where I was torn. Do I think that this is going to end up being a defensive battle where both teams kind of struggle, or do you think this is going to be a shootout? Because in my mind,
it depends. I think it depends on what I'm
not talking like 40 something nothing, but like,
let me put it this way without telling you my scores. I've got scores in the low 30s.
We're pretty close.
Here's my real man. There's so many storylines to this game.
Yeah.
Also, let's not forget the storyline of Chip Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is a massive storyline. Does it affect the game? No, but it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. One of the things that is really fascinating to me, and I am going to hang my hat on something you said, which is the team that makes the first mistake. Obviously, you could say, well, whoever makes more mistakes loses. Yeah, no duh.
That's what I said. It sounds like a cop
no,
out.
But I will. So maybe I'll fine tune and say the team that makes the first mistake probably loses this game.
That's what I said.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, I said the team that makes the first mistake
I'll try
loses.
and listen a little bit better
Pay
next
attention.
time. And here's why I bring that up. So we mentioned Will Howard's interceptions. Dylan Gabriel has also thrown...
They're similar stats.
Dylan Gabriel has thrown 3 interceptions in 2 games. Their last 2 games being against UCLA and Michigan State. Mm-hmm. 2 teams that are not very good. Will Howard has also thrown 3, turned the ball over 3 times.
Both of them had bad games against similar opponent in Michigan State.
And then this past weekend against Iowa. So the turnover, that can't happen for either team.
No.
Okay. The talent on offense, or the talent at the quarterback position, is pretty firmly Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm excited for this entire game. Excites me because it's both sides of the ball are going to be so well matched up.
Mm-hmm.
I was real close to I took Oregon.
I'm stunned.
I was real close to taking Ohio State in this game. I think because you've got the game at Autzen Stadium. That's a tough place to play.
Oh, they're going to be ready.
That's a tough place to play. And Ohio State's not had to have that yet. Michigan State does not count.
Here's where I think that
just
falls,
about any category, Michigan State does not count.
Here's where I think that falls short, though, is you can say that about most teams when you go into a place and you're inexperienced.
Sure.
This Ohio State team is mostly seniors, especially on defense, where it really, really matters. And I would even say with the quarterback position, Will Howard, granted, he hasn't played. Shut your mouth. I hate that. I'm just kidding, Laurel. I love it. It's hilarious. But you go into this game, and Will Howard hasn't played to a game this magnitude, but he's played in big stadiums. The Big 12 has some good matchups.
But I think some of that matters. Some of it doesn't, though.
But here's where I think it does matter, because I think you're bringing in a ton of seniors who have been in games like this. I think a lot of these players that were on defense were at Michigan. Granted, they lost, but they were at Michigan in that environment. They were at Notre Dame. They've played at Penn State, all of which I would say rival what they're going to experience at Oregon.
Well, so, and by the way, I want to be clear here. I am not strictly picking it based on location. Yeah. I'm saying that is in a game where we're saying game where we're saying these teams are so razor thin, and you really have to pry the razor thin margins apart to go, what's going to make a difference here? I think location does matter. The other thing that I think as well is just like as similar as the turnover battle or as the turnover numbers are, Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback. And I think that is enough of a margin for, and again, Ohio State's got a very good offense, but I think the Dylan Gabriel factor is enough of a margin for Oregon to win. I have got this one by literally a point.
Oh, okay.
31-30. I'm going to take Oregon.
You're wrong. I'll tell you my score and I'll tell you why. I have Ohio State 34, Oregon 27. I think you're fair in your assessment of Dylan Gabriel. I think anybody with a brain would say Dylan Gabriel is a better quarterback than Will Howard. I don't think Will Howard is a bad quarterback. I think he can come out there, he can do enough, and I think he doesn't need to do a ton. Whereas I think Dylan Gabriel has to kind of have that kind of a game. I think he's got to have Quinn Ewers style game where he's throwing for high 200s, low 300 style game, handful of touchdowns. I don't think Will Howard has to have that game. I don't think Will Howard needs to come out and be a game manager. He's going to have to make some throws, but you've got enough playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. You have enough running backs that can get the job done. If your offensive line can do their job, create some gaps, I think you're going to see a good chunk of Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson.
Yep.
And I would put some money, put some bank behind this Ohio State defense. I think so far this year, they've proven that they're still the same defense we saw last year. And I think in a game like this, when it comes down to it, do I trust Oregon's defense or do I trust Ohio State's defense more? And I think that I'm going to go with the team that's brought back experience, that's brought back leaders, that's proven it so far on the field.
And I think that's all fair. And like that's kind of like, no, go at each other. So we've done that. Okay, like this game is so razor thin. The only other thing that I would say here is that I guess there's two things here. Number one, we saw in the Michigan State game some susceptibility in the secondary. That's a problem when you play Oregon. So that's where like I think you can rightfully go, hey, I'm going to bank on experience and veteran. Yeah, but you can't have that.
No,
and that's what I'm saying though. It's like you can't have half a foot. This comes full circle to the Michigan thing, right? You can't play 3/4 of football against Oregon. Oregon can't play 3/4 of football against Ohio State. So I don't see enough from Ohio State based on what I've seen, because there have been those moments where I go, ooh, that's a little bit susceptible that I think Oregon can exploit. The other thing too is that if you start slow and you do find yourself behind, that's where more pressure comes on Will Howard, and that's a situation I don't think you want to be in.
And I think when it comes down to it, it's what we said from the very start.
You got to start quick.
We talked about it. Whoever makes the first mistake is going to be the one that loses this game. And I think Ohio State's defense has done a phenomenal job all season long of creating those mistakes.
And if you create one early, a game on,
I think
man.
The secondary to me, outside of the D line, is the strength of this Ohio State defense. I mean, you got Denzel Burke, Lathan Ransom, who's been a menace. You have Caleb Downs. I mean, just those names alone, I think, can help shut down some of the passing game. That's why these guys came back. That's why Caleb Downs transferred over.
This is without a doubt outside of playoffs, outside of the Michigan game. Okay?
This is very well a potential Big Ten championship game.
This is why you spent $21 million in the offseason. Games like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the playoff. Yeah, it's the game. Games like this, because here's the thing. Yeah, you've got, we've talked about Michigan having no room for error. A loss to Oregon and Ohio State's in the same position with a much better program at the moment, but the situation remains the same. And you do still have to go to Penn State, and you do still have to play the game at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And
we have Indiana,
and also Indiana. Yeah. And like you said, you also would have to play in a Big Ten championship game as a possible rematch. You cannot afford two losses because your schedule to start the year especially was real soft. Michigan had this last year. You can't afford two losses.
I think you can, but I think it depends. So I think, and then we can move on to our stupid genius. But I think if you lose to Oregon this weekend and then you play them again in the Big Ten championship and lose again,
it's over. Done.
With two losses, you're out.
Yep.
If you go into the Big Ten championship and lose to whoever you would end up playing besides them, you might still have a chance, but it ain't looking good.
Yeah. Ask Oregon about Washington last year.
100% the same situation. So you got to be able to at least handle business now.
Here's the last thing I'll say, and we'll go to stupid genius here. This word gets thrown around a lot on Michigan beat sites and stuff. It's the German word Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is...
That just seems like a weird place to ever be. I'm glad I'm never on those.
Schadenfreude is a German word that basically means taking pleasure in the oppression of your opponent. I'm going to need the Schadenfreude to really cash in this Saturday.
Dwight.
Okay. Perfektenschlag. I don't know why I did in that voice. He doesn't have that kind of voice. I'm going to need that to cash in because I'm going to need something to celebrate in this bye week.
I will be sick on Monday and Saturday night if they end up losing that.
All right, let's jump to Stupid Genius here as we wrap up. Scoreboard's real tight. I had 7.5 points, and you just added 7 points with an SMU pick.
Them Stangs, let's go.
So 7.5 to 7. Rules are pretty simple. It's got to be 5.5 point spread, and you get the spread as the number of points if you win. Who do you have?
Mine is right at 5.5 point.
Dogs. Oh, did we take the same thing?
USC over Penn State. While I don't think USC is as good as advertised, I've said it before and I'll say it again. James Franklin is a trash head coach, and in big games he crumbles. And I think this is one of those games. Yep. Penn State is not built for this. I don't think USC is either, but I do think they are talented enough to get one of these. I think USC is a better team than you're giving them credit. I think you're enjoying. They're both fine. I think you're enjoying the Michigan downfall and trying to cap in on that. Boy, am I. But I don't think USC is a bad football team at all. I agree with you, though. That's who I took as well, because Penn State, I said this right after the win they got over UCLA. Penn State is the most unimpressive 5-0 team in the country. Mm-hmm. And it's not particularly close. This is not a game that I see USC winning, because I think... You mean Penn State? Who did I say? USC. Whatever. You know what I meant. I think USC's offense is too good. I think the offense is too good. I mean, you've watched Penn State struggle against Bowling Green at home. You watched them struggle against, who was the other team? Illinois at home, and that was under the lights. While Illinois is undefeated and a good team, I think with the talent you have on the Penn State roster, those are two games that should just not even be close. And so I'm looking at USC. I hope it's a great game. I hope it's a great game. I hope USC beats them. Because I'm tired of hearing Penn State get hyped up. This is like and check me on this. This is like, it's either the third or the fifth. I don't remember which one. It might be the third. Third year in a row that Penn State has started off 5-0. I think they have the record. And where has that gotten them? Nowhere. Not in a Big Ten championship game, not in a playoff, not in a win over Ohio State, not in a win over Michigan. Congratulations. You beat Bowling Green. Give me USC on this one. In a close game. Closer than the experts. You barely beat Bowling Green. Hey, subscribe to the Rivalry Podcast wherever you're listening right now, or through the Varsity Network app. Be sure to tell a friend as well, and be sure to follow at RivalPod across social media. And if you want to support the podcast, rivalpod.com.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.